Today we're going to make a quilt coat. Hi, I'm Candace and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to show you how I made this fully reversible quilt coat. But first I need to take it off because it's so hot. So I've been wanting to make a quilt coat for a long time now. They've been trendy for a couple years, I feel like. And I've been keeping an eye out at the thrift store for quilts and blankets that I could upcycle into one. And I've collected about 3 or 4 at this point and decided it was finally time to just make one into a coat. So I ended up choosing this one I found at Value Village last year, and I think I bought it for $10.99. It has these really pretty embroidered purple and pink flowers in the center and this floral print around the border. There are so many beautiful quilt coats out there, but the one that's really caught my eye is the Chloe jacket by Free People. I love that it has a really oversized fit, and I really like the contrasting bias bound seams. And the other feature I really like is that it has a stand collar. I've seen a lot of quilt jackets out there, but a lot of them either don't have a collar or they have like a really big collar. So I definitely want to incorporate that into my jacket. And I don't have a pattern in my collection that's similar enough to this jacket to hack, so I ended up drafting one from my block for this project. Here's my plan for the jacket draft. I started by just taking a good look at the inspo pics and taking measurements on myself to decide how big I wanted the sleeve, how tapered I wanted the wrists, how big I wanted the pockets, etc. And then I went to my block and drafted it out. If you are interested in learning how I drafted this jacket, I'm planning on doing a whole draft with me type series on Patreon, and this is going to be the first video. I'm hoping to have it published by the time this video is live, so check out the link in the description if you're interested in seeing that. I get a lot of questions about drafting, and I actually learned a lot of what I know from Craftsy, which is also the sponsor of today's video. Craftsy is the online resource for all things creative. I first joined Craftsy a few years ago to learn more about pattern making, and I took almost all the courses by Susie Furr. She is so knowledgeable and detailed, and I learned so much from those classes. But Craftsy doesn't only have pattern making classes, it has classes on almost anything you could want to learn about, from garment sewing to quilting, knitting and crochet, embroidery, painting, drawing, baking, cooking, photography, and even yoga and fitness. There are a bunch of classes that I'm eyeing because I want to make some heirloom Christmas crafts this year, so I definitely am going to take this class on making a classic quilted stocking by Kate Colleran. If you've been wanting to learn a new craft or pick up a new hobby, now is the perfect time to join Craftsy. The first 1,000 people to click the link in my video will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. This is valid for new members only, but you can't get much better than that. So make sure to click that link in my description if you want to join. Thank you so much again to Craftsy for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to the jacket. I did something really stupid. I drafted 2 patterns, so the first mock-up one and a second one with some modifications, and I didn't label anything. I just drafted it in Illustrator and loaded it, and I sent it to my projector and accidentally cut out the first draft. And I'm so upset with myself because there's only a limited amount of this fabric. The rest has that floral print on the border. Not that I hate it, but I just didn't really want it on the front. So I managed to cut 2 new pieces for the front, but the back has this floral down the center, which I don't hate, but that wasn't my original plan. The good news is though that the way I drafted the sleeves, they're in 2 pieces, so I can fit 2 full upper sleeves on it, and then I think the bottom part of the sleeve closer to the cuff will have this fabric on it. So I think it's gonna be fine. I'm gonna finish cutting the sleeves and the collar out now. Whew, we made it and I cut out all my pieces and I'm pretty happy with the pattern placement. I am still like kicking myself for cutting that one piece, but it ended up working out okay because I used that for the sleeves. try on and it's looking so good. I'm pretty happy with the pattern. It's a little bit bigger than I thought it was gonna be. So I think for my final jacket pattern, I'm going to decrease this drop shoulder a little bit, and that's also gonna take in some of the ease in the body. But the sleeve length is really good. I added this cuff piece at the end just to take in the width of the sleeve, and it's kind of like an interesting design detail. But I just have to decide on bias tape now. So I think I dropped all of my scraps. Where did they go? I had 4 options. I can't find the other one, but I didn't like that one anyways. These are the 3 colors. I'm actually really liking these like greenish ones. I think this one is my favorite. I think it'd be like a really nice pop of color with the jacket, but I'll be honest, I'm like pretty terrible at color combinations and pairing things like that. And I also just don't wear a lot of colors, but I'm almost at the point where I have to make a decision because I can't keep sewing until I start binding the seams, or I'm not going to be able to bind them. We shall see. I put a little poll on Instagram. We'll see what everybody else says. It's so cute. It's a little bit big, but I also will wear this in the winter time. So I'm gonna be happy for the room, I think, when I can put a thick sweater underneath. All right, so the binding. People on Instagram say purple, but I don't really like purple. So I think I'm gonna go with the green. That's the second one, the darker green in second place. And I also don't think that I will use this fabric to make anything. Like, I don't have a lot of it, and I don't see myself like making a top out of this color. I think it's just a little too green for me. So we're gonna go with this one for the bias tape. Okay, so I cut my strips 2 inches wide because I started with 1.5 inches and then I ironed a double fold knit, and it seemed too skinny, and the seams on this thing are really bulky because it's like 2 layers of quilts. So I think this is gonna be good. I'm just gonna press these seams open. I'm probably gonna need a little bit more than this, so I'm gonna have to cut another square. But we're getting there. So I ended up doing 2 different methods on the shoulder seams because I didn't like the way I did it the first time. So this one's pretty messy and also super thick because there's 2 layers of quilt and then 2 layers on each side of the binding. It was just like really hard to sew. I don't know if you can see how puffy that is, but it's super thick. And the way that I sewed it, it's just not that nice on the outside. You can see my stitching is like not very even. So for the other side, I used it like seam binding, and I just placed it over top of the seam and then sewed it on either side. And I think this looks a lot better. So I'm going to do the same thing to the center back seam, and then I will be able to close up the sleeves and add the collar. Excuse me, can I help you? Maya, you want to go for a walk? Yes, the answer is yes. Yes, you do. The fall weather finally arrived and it's freezing today, which is totally fine because I'm gonna have a quilt coat very soon. So here is where we got to yesterday. The next thing to do is close up the side seams and then add the collar, or vice versa, depending on how I'm feeling. But here is the collar piece. I was so lucky to have enough fabric to cut this out of just the embroidered flowers section, but it's just a little stand collar that I drafted. It's just 1 layer, as is the whole jacket. So I'm gonna have to bind the inside of this seam, and then the binding is gonna go all the way around the rest of the jacket. I'm also wearing a sweater today to try this on. just to see how it'll look with a little bit more clothing underneath. This sweater isn't actually even that thick, but this is more of what I'm going to be wearing underneath it in the winter because I live in Canada and it gets really cold here. This jacket probably actually won't even last me through the whole winter because sometimes it gets to be like -20. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but very cold. It's looking very close to this inspo pic. My collar piece is a bit taller, and when it's colder outside, it's going to be nice to have this neck coverage. What could be better than wearing an actual blanket outside when it's cold? Collar is on. Now I'm like second guessing whether I should have doubled it up because it feels a little floppy, but I'll try it on and see. I have to redo a little bit of stitching here as I got a tiny little pucker. That's a very easy fix, but let's see. Okay, no, that's fine. I think that's gonna work. And then I need to bind the raw edges of the inside of the collar here. I use this seam tape like you saw earlier, but I think for the collar edge, since you'll see that if the coat flips open, I'll probably use the same binding that I'm using on the outside. I think I have to cut some more binding. This binding I cut for the edges is just a bit too thick to cover the seams. So I'm gonna go cut some 1.5 inch binding. I'm not gonna lie, the stitching on this is not the neatest, and that makes me a little annoyed because normally I like to be as precise as I can, but this quilt is so thick. It doesn't even seem that thick, but once you double up the seam allowance and add binding, she's thick. I think I also have to switch to a zipper foot because my regular presser foot is not great with these thick seams. Like one side is super high and the other side is super low. So my stitches just aren't going where I want them to. So we're gonna switch. Here is my zipper foot. This thing is very underrated. So this is what we have, a big flat coat. Now I'm gonna sew the side seams, fold it right sides together and sew along the sleeve edge and then down the body of the jacket on both sides. And I'm hoping to serge this, but I'm not sure. Just saying that, I don't know if it's a good idea because of how thick some of these seams are. Probably a bad idea. This intersection would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 6 layers, 4 of which are a quilt. I don't think my serger is going to love that. So we might have to bind the inside of the coat too. So much for this being a fast project. This is my favorite tool for sewing thick seams. It's called the jeans-a-majig, and you just place it under your presser foot and it lifts it to the height of the thick seam. My machine actually is really advanced and it has like some kind of special sensor presser foot, but I find that when it's really thick seams like this, you do need this. However, you don't need this exact tool. You can use like a piece of folded up cardboard or an old needle case, but I do like this one because I use this a lot and it has a little space here for the needle, which is really nice. And I don't know, they're not that expensive, maybe like $5. So here is the jacket with a pocket that I've cut out, and I don't like it. I don't like this floral print. there. I don't mind it on the cuffs, but I think it breaks up the jacket too much. But I don't have any of this fabric left with just the white and the flowers, except for these scraps. So I think what I'm gonna do is put them together, serge them, and piece them together into scrappy pockets and then attach those instead, because this is not the vibe. Okay, we're in the home stretch now, but I think after applying this binding on the pockets, I'm gonna have to change my method for doing the binding on the rest of the jacket, because for these, I just folded the binding in half, got a double fold, and put it on the outside of the pocket and then sewed away. And while it looks good on the outside, sort of, the back side got missed in a bunch of places. So what I'm gonna do is sew it right sides together with the coat first and then flip it under and top stitch. It will save me the headache of having to fix all this business on an entire coat. But the good news is I have cut enough bias tape, I think. I was so close with having enough bias tape. This is how far I got around. I'm literally missing 1 inch. But I do have these tiny scraps, so I'm going to sew these together and then sew this to that. And then we're so close to being done. I never want to bind anything again, or at least not for the foreseeable future, because there's so much binding in this. I actually ended up changing out my needle because my machine like spazzed. It didn't even actually jam, because usually it comes up with an error message saying that the motor was overloaded. It's just like the needle went down into the fabric and just didn't come out, and like it went and I hate when that happens with machines. It's like so nerve-wracking. I'm sweating again, which is why my sweater's off. But I changed my needle from just like a universal 9014 to a chrome top stitch needle, and it's working a lot better. It's not doing that like thud. The needle was definitely thudding before, so I think it wasn't quite sharp enough. It didn't break or anything, so that's a plus. But this is how I've done the binding. So here's my jacket. I sewed it right side to wrong side along the entire edge of the jacket. And now I'm going to fold it up. It has this other second fold, and bring it up to cover the front. And I've pinned it in place, and now I can top stitch from the right side, and it's gonna look a lot nicer, and I know that the bottom's already sewn on, so I don't have to worry about catching the bottom. So we're like 99% done. After this, just the pockets, and we will finally be finished. Even though this was like a pretty quick project, this is only day 2, I'm tired, and I'm tired of binding. Okay, my kids are home now, so I'm sneaking off to just finish this. I made the pockets a little bit smaller, so I think that's a much better size for this jacket, and I'm just gonna top stitch them on now. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed making this quilt jacket with me. I'm thinking about releasing this as a sewing pattern, so if you'd be interested in that, definitely let me know in the comments. And I'm gonna start working on the next Learn to Sew video really soon, and I also have a lot of fun crafty Christmas videos planned for November and December, so make sure to subscribe if you want to see those. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!